Okay, good morning, everyone. So, our topic for this day is about international economics. So, first, we will have the definition of terms of the international economics. So, first, we will define international trade. International trade is the trade between the people or firms in different countries. So, trade, no, baylo sa mga products, no, international trade between different countries. Okay. Export, when we say export, it is the sale of goods and services abroad. So gina-export ng mga product. It is the sale of the goods and services abroad. Ang gina-import pod mo ni ang purchase of the goods and services abroad. So ang ginapalit pod, no, nga mga goods and services abroad. So muna mailan niyo ang different meaning, no, sa export and the import. Now, unsa pod ning net exports? So the net export, it is the value of the goods and services sold abroad minus the value of the goods and services both from the rest of the world, export minus import. So mo ni ang pasabot sa net export. Okay, bali ang iyang formula, the export minus import, it is equal to the net exports. So again, export minus import is equals to net export. So meaning, it is the value of the goods and services sold abroad minus the value of goods and services both from the rest of the world. So what is international trade? Again, it is the exchange of the goods or the merchandise and the services among the countries of the world. So in any country. So mo nang atong international trade. When we see goods, so ano sa ang goods and services, sir? Ang goods mao ni ang mga tangible and storable. It is something that you can drop on your toe. Okay? The tangible and storable. Makita atong mahipusan. Mao na ang mga goods. While the services, it is intangible and non-storable. So kabaliktaran po na siya, dili makita o dili po mahipusan. It is something you cannot drop on your toe. Okay. Services like barbershop. So the barber extending his service to the customer. So mo na mga services na mga professional talents. So mga services nga other services, mga beauty services and any services nga katong niya na ito makita, mga ginalihok lang sa tao. Okay, mo ng mga services. While the goods, makita, may pusan, makaon ng uban. Okay? Or masuot o maon sa para diha. Okay, mo nang kayan sa goods and services. So, the next. Okay, so again, so mo na ang atong mga definition of terms, no, about the international economics. So, daghang pa kay tag mga definition for the next chapter of this topic. So we will wait. Okay. There are 4 reasons why a country could gain from the trade. So natay upat, no? Karason nganong ang atong country makaginan siya from the trade. So the first is the mutual gains from the voluntary exchange of existing goods. Okay? Mutual, no? When people voluntarily exchange the existing goods, they mutually gain even though there is no increase in the amount of goods in the economy by reaching the preferred combination of the different goods than before the trade. So murag makaginan siya nagyapon to from the mutual. So sa ginang pa nga, even though there is no increase in the amount of the goods, but it reached by the combination of the different goods than before the trade. Okay, mao na ang first reason why country could gain from the trade. The second is to increase competition. It makes home market competitive. So increased competition, no? pataas to kung nagpataas no ang pag-compete no sa mga goods and services. Okay. And the next, third is the division of labor. Okay, division of labor, it is identified as the key reason for trade, of course. So there is much less opportunity cost if market is larger or increased production. And it reduces the cost since its worker can specialize and develop expertise in a certain area. And the gain in trade is the reduction in cost per unit. So this is the third reason of division of labor. And the fourth is a better use of skills and resources and different countries. So country can gain from trade if they export the things or the product that they are good at producing and imports product that other countries are good in producing. Okay. So again, first, mutual gains from the voluntary exchange of existing goods. Second, increased competition. Third, division of labor. And the fourth is a better use of skills and resources. Okay. Now, specialization and comparative advantage. So what is comparative advantage? Okay. Comparative advantage is a situation in which a person or a country one good more efficiently than another good in comparison in another person or country. So again, comparative advantage, again, a situation in which a person or a country, one good is more efficient than another good compared to another person or another country. So, naay comparison, that is comparative advantage. What is absolute advantage? Okay, absolute advantage, it is the situation in which a person or a country is more efficient at producing po, no? More efficient at producing a good in comparison with another person or country. Okay. So sa comparative advantage, again, more efficient. Okay. One good is more efficient than another good. An absolute advantage is a person or country is more efficient at producing a good. Okay. Again, comparative advantage, a good is more efficient than another good compared to another country. And sa absolute advantage, a country or a person is more efficient at producing the good in compare with another person or another country. Okay, sabta no, at least na ilan nato ang comparative, it is the good that is more efficient. Ang absolute, it is the person or the country that is more efficient at producing a goods. Okay. Now, opportunity cost. Opportunity cost, it is the value of the next foregone alternative. Okay, the value of the next foregone alternative. So natin tinatawag nga gina-sacrifice, no? Gina-sacrifice ang isa ka butang para makuha atong isa ka opportunity. So man ang ginatawag na itong opportunity cost. It gives a way to define the comparative advantage. So a person with lower opportunity cost of producing a good, then another person has a comparative advantage in that good. Okay, morag sa opportunity cost na dili ang kung ano to ang comparative advantage. So katong person with a lower opportunity cost of producing a good, so ma-compare na dayon on that goods. Okay. So specialization and international trade increase the productivity of the nation's resources and allow for greater total output than would otherwise be possible, according to Adam Smith, 1776. So David Ricardo, he is the British economist, expanded the Smith's idea by observing that it pays much for a person or a country to specialize and trade, even if some potential trading partners is more productive in all economic activities. So, specializing enables a nation to reduce the cost of obtaining the goods and services they desired by taking its comparative cost. Now, the agents of trade growth. Okay, unsay mga agents no sa trade growth. So first is the transportation technology. Of course, the first agent, transportation. So high transportation costs are barriers to any type of trade, particularly among traders who are distant from each other. Okay, man, that's transportation technology. A second, the communication technology. A communication technology, the dramatic improvement of communication technology have also advanced world trade. So computers, the internet, the telephones, the facsimile machines, directly link traders around the world and enabling the exporters to access the overseas markets to carry out the trade deals. Third, general decline in tariffs. So many nations still maintain barriers to free trade, but on the average, tariffs have fallen significantly, thus increasing the international trade. Okay, so the terms of trade. Say terms trade. First is the quantity of imported goods a country can obtain in exchange for a unit of exported goods. Second, exchange ratio of a product in terms of quantity. It is equal to the amount of product imported or exported. Okay, what is world price? World price, it is the price that equates the quantities supplied and demanded globally. Okay, the price that equates the quantity supplied and demanded globally. Now, globally, world price. So the gains in trade, first, improvements in income that is based on comparative advantage. Second is production, the added outputs. And third is the satisfaction owing to the exchange of goods and services. That is the improved options. Okay. The financial linkages. There are four main categories of economic flow linking nation. First flow, ginatawag nato nga good flows or the good and services flows. The countries export goods and services to other nation and import the goods from other nation. Okay. The country now, again, the country export the goods and services to other nation and import the goods from the other nations also. That is the goods and services flow or the goods flow. The second is the capital and labor flows or ginatawag na ito nga resources flows. It is the country's production facilities, the capital in foreign countries and foreign firms, establishment in the country, and the labor also moves between the nations. And third is the information and technology flows. It is the countries transmit to other nations about their domestic products, prices, interest rates, and investment opportunities, and receive such information abroad. And the last one is the financial flows. It is the transfer of money between the countries for several purposes. For example, paying for imports, buying the foreign assets, paying interest in debt, and providing the foreign aid. Okay. Now, gitawag nga trade liberalization or the free trade. Okay. When we say free trade, it is a complete lack of restriction to international trade. No? Free trade, no? Complete lack of restriction to international trade. The trade barriers are trade barriers protectionist policy, the policy used by the government that restricted trade to protect the domestic producers. So sa atong trade barriers, natin mga terms, tariffs. So what is tariff? Madungan man inyo sa tariffs. So tariffs, these are the excise tax imposed in imported goods. Kaya mao na ang mga tariffs. Excise tax nga gina-impose sa mga imported goods. It is imposed to obtain the revenue or protect domestic firms against the import competition against the world. So meaning, the higher the tariff, the more trade is restricted, of course. So, ang revenue tariff, under this tariff, natin itawag na revenue. Now, the revenue tariff. Revenue tariff, it is an import tax used to provide the government revenue. It is usually applied to a product that is not being produced domestically to obtain the return from the importing country. It is designed to shield domestic producers from the foreign competition, and it puts the foreign. Yeah? The revenue tariff, an import tax used to provide the government revenue. Protective, na po tawag nga protective tariff. Protective tariff, it is the tax meant to raise the price of imported good in order to protect a certain domestic industry from foreign competition. It is designed to shield domestic producers from foreign competitions, and it puts the foreign producer at comparative disadvantage since the price of imported goods will go higher. Okay. There are two kinds of tariff. First, the ad valorem, and second is specific. The ad valorem tariff, a tax on imports evaluated as percentage of the value of the imports. No? Ad valorem, tax on imports evaluated as percentage of the value of the imports. While a specific tariff, it is the tax on import that is proportional to the number of units or items imported. No, one specific tariff na to, tax on imports that is proportional to the number of units or items imported. So the economic impact of tariffs is the decline in consumption, increase in domestic production, decline in imports, and of course, the tariff revenue. Now, what is import quota? Import quota, it is a law that fixes the amount of imports. No? Import quota, a law that fixes the amount of imports. It specifies the maximum amount of commodity that may be imported in any period. The product might be imported regardless of high tariffs, but low import quotas completely prohibits the imports. So the economic impact of quotas is same as economic impact of the tariffs. While tariff generate revenue for domestic government, a quota transfer the revenue to foreign producers. Nailan na to, ang tariff is generate revenue from domestic government. Ang quota na to is to transfer the revenue to the foreign producers. So the net cost of tariffs and quotas, the tariff and quotas impose the cost on domestic consumers but provide the gains to the domestic producers. And in the case of tariff, revenue to the revenue is to the government. Okay. And the consumer cost in trade restrictions are calculated in the consumer's prices as being determined of the effect of restriction to the consumer prices. So protection raises production in three ways. Correct the spelling na three na tulo. First, the price of imported goods or imported product goes up. Second, the higher the price of imports causes some consumers to shift their purchases to high price domestically produced goods. And third, the prices of domestically produced goods will increase because the import competition has declined. Okay. Third, the non-tariff barriers or ginatawag na tong NTB, ang non-tariff barriers. NTB include anything from quotas to quality standards aimed at to reduce the imports of the foreign products. So licensing requirements that specifies unreasonable standards pertaining to product quality and safety. Then setting standards and restricting issuance of licenses. Fourth, trade liberalization is the voluntary export restriction or VER, VER. It is a trade barrier by which foreign firms voluntarily limit the amount of their exports to a particular country, and is used to avoid stringent trade barriers to the importing country. So there are cases for protection to justify trade barriers. First, military self-sufficiency argument. It is protective tariffs that are needed to preserve or strengthen the industries that produce the material essential for national defense. And second, increased domestic employment argument. So, reducing imports will divert spending on the other nation's output to spending on domestic output. So, thus, the domestic output and employment will rise. So the shortcomings of these arguments are job creation from imports, fallacy of composition, and possibility of retaliation. Napuntay long run feedback. Then diversification for stability argument and the infant industry argument. Okay, napuntay strategic trade policy, protection against dumping argument, and the cheap foreign labor argument. Okay. So how to reduce that trade barriers? Lagi na mga barriers. Saan na ito pag-reduce sa trade barriers? First, unilateral disarmament. So the removal of trade barriers by one country without the reciprocal actions on the part of other countries. So manang ginatawag nga unilateral disarmament. Next, second is multilateral negotiation. It involves simultaneous tariff reductions among many countries. So the main example of this approach is the GATT. Okay, mo ng GATT. Sa meaning sa GATT, itong mailan tarong taon. Then regional trading areas. Example, the NAFTA or the North American Free Trade Agreement. And the managed trade, actions of government agencies to affect the trade by persuading firms to buy or sell the larger or smaller quantities of the goods in other countries. So ang GATT mo ni ang General Agreement on Tariff and Trade. Okay, GATT, General Agreement on Tariff and Trade. It is a set of agreements representing a policy, a contract, or a treaty on a multilateral principles. So the policy is designed and has for its purposes to eliminate or remove of the bilateralisms and the quotas and the reduction of tariffs and other restrictions on or the barriers to the international trades. So the provisions of this final act, it reduces the protection and tariffs for agricultural product. It is the first multilateral to reach a comprehensive agreement on international trade. Then it makes the provision for the protections of intellectual property rights or IPR, and it established a dispute settlement body designed to ensure the compliance and resolve the conflicts between member countries. So GATT has three guiding principles in the promotion of international trade. First, the multinational negotiation. Second, the non-discriminatory reduction. And third is the dismantling non-tariff tier constraints. So what is the functions or what are the functions of the GATT? First is to negotiate the reduction of tariffs and other impediment to trade. Second, to develop the new trade policy. Third, to adjust the trade disputes. And fourth is to establish the rules to govern the trade policies to each member. Okay, mo to ang sa okay, pata na end. I'm sorry. Okay, mo to ang sa General Agreement on Tariff and Trade. Now, we will discuss on the balance of payments, the exchange rates, and the international reserves. So the balance of payment or mo na ang acronym nga BOP, balance of payment. It is the record of the composition of the balance of the current account balance and the many transactions that finance it. So it is a statement of all transactions made between entities in one country and the rest of the world. And it includes the current account and the capital account. So the current account includes a nation's net trade in goods and services, its net earnings on the cross-border investment, and its net transfer payments, while the capital account consists of the nation transaction in the financial instrument and the central bank reserves. So balance of payment is the sum of all transactions recorded in the balance of payments should be zero. However, exchange rate fluctuations and differences in accounting practices may hinder this practice. So the balance of payments again divided the transactions into accounts. Mao itong ginatawag na current account and the capital account. So sometimes the capital account it is called the financial account with a separate, usually very small, and capital account listed separately. So the capital account, broadly defined, includes the transactions in financial instruments and the central bank reserves. So the current account includes transactions in goods, services, investment, and income, and then the current transfers. Now, we will proceed in the balance of payments equilibrium. So the balance of payments equilibrium occurs when induced the balance of payments transactions. So those engineered by the government to influence the nominal exchange rate are zero, and it implies the autonomous receipts from the export and the sale of the securities abroad equal autonomous payments for imports and the purchase of securities from the foreign residents. Okay, since changes in the stock of official reserves of foreign exchange are the method used by the authorities to fix it. So balance of payments deficit, so nakikitawag na ito nga deficit, it means that the country imports more goods, services, and capital. Okay. Matawag ang balance of payment mahimong deficit o ang country mo import og daghan nga goods and services and the capital than the export. So this means that the currency is a borrowing or accumulating debts from abroad. While a balance of payment surplus, BOP surplus, it means that the country exports more than it imports. So BOP surplus kung daghan tag gina-export kaysa gina-import. But BOP deficit kung daghan tag gina-import kaysa gina-export. Okay. So muna ang mga timayla nato sa balance of payments. So we will proceed in the Forex, no? Short for foreign exchange. So foreign exchange or the Forex, it is the conversion of one country's currency into another. In a free economy, a country's currency is valued according to the laws of supply and demand. So meaning a currency value can be pegged to another country's currency, such as the US dollar or even to a basket of the currencies. Exchange rate, it is the value of one nation's currency versus the currency of another nation or economic zone. For example, how many US dollars does it take to buy 1 euro? So exchange rate, diba? Kung na may money nga, pila kang exchange rate niya karon. Ano siya? The Forex market, okay, the foreign exchange market, also known as Forex, FX, or currencies market, it is an over-the-counter or OTC global marketplace that determines the exchange rate for currencies around the world. So participants in these markets can buy, can sell, can exchange, and can speculate on the relative exchange rates of the various currency pairs. So major players of the Forex markets are the banks, Forex dealers, commercial companies, central banks, investment management firms, the hedge funds, retail Forex dealers, and the investors. Okay. Napo tayo mga exchange rate system. First is the free floating exchange rate system. So the governments and central banks do not participate in the market for Forex. So the relationship between the governments and central banks on the one hand and currency markets on the other is much the same as the typical relationship between this institution and stock markets. So the government regulate the stock markets to prevent the fraud, but the stock values themselves are left to float in the market. Second is the fixed exchange rate system. The exchange rate between two currencies is set by the government policy, and there are several mechanisms through which the fixed exchange rates may be maintained. Whatever the system for maintaining these rates, however, all fixed exchange rate system share some important features. So there are determinants of exchange rate, changes in taste, relative income changes, relative price level changes, relative interest rates, and the speculations. O sa mga instrument, sa atong Forex, first of course is the capital or the telegraphic transfer. An importer in the Philippines with a payment to the market abroad would pay in peso to the Philippines bank, which would cable its branch or its foreign correspondent to make a payment in foreign currency to the exporter abroad. So muna ang capital transfer. Second is the bank drafts. It is the check or mga cheque drawn by one bank to another. Mga bank drafts. And third is letter of credit. This may be denominated and make payable in the currency of either the exporter or the importer. Og natay gitawag nga international reserve. Sa nang international reserve? Refer to the gold holdings and dollar balances of the national treasury, which, except the sinking fund, were taken over by the Central Bank of the Philippines. So, sa Pilipinas, ang tigbuat kwarta ang Central Bank of the Philippines. So, our country's international reserves consist of the gold, the forex assets of the central bank, and the net foreign exchange holding of the commercial bank. So, ang balance of international payment, it is a striking balance between the exchange receipt and the exchange disbursement. The deficit, it is negative balance or imuhang ginansya ng gansi, no, ang gansi, deficit. A negative balance or exist of debits over credits on account of certain transactions which will cause trouble if it becomes large and persistent. And the surplus, it is the positive balance on account of this transaction, while in a statistical sense, a surplus is simply the reciprocal of a deficit. And of course, that's the end of our topic on international economics. Okay, and we will proceed on the agricultural marketing for the next video. Okay, thank you for listening to our discussion on chapter 5 of our subject AgEntrep221, Introduction to or the principles of agricultural economics and marketing. Okay, and I hope you understand our discussions, and see you for our next